you cannot have a welfare state that exists, that survives, if you have large numbers of people who've never put into it but are taking out of it.
You've described Hungary as a kind of laboratory of the West many years ago. Is it still valid? Is it a laboratory for a conservative way of how you govern, how you build state?
If I said it, then of course it's still valid. No, of course. I mean, this was what, when I wrote my book, The Strange Death of Europe, about the 2015 crisis, and indeed the crisis of some decades in Europe. It said there are certain key moments in modern European histories, and that was one of them. And the question that was posed that year, and which the Orban government answered, was, are we in Europe a place where anyone in the world can move in? Indeed, perhaps everyone in the world can move in and call it home. And the answer from Berlin and Brussels was yes, yes. And the answer in Budapest was no. And I think Budapest was right. I don't think Europe can be the home for anyone in the world who wants to call it home, just in population numbers, welfare numbers, integration numbers. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And it was a very, very important thing that this country that we're sitting in said no, and that its leadership said no. As I say, the key thing will be whether or not in the years to come people recognize that was a brave and important political decision, or whether they think it was effectively inevitable, that as it were anyone in charge would have done that. It's not the case, as you and I know. That required a lot of political will in 2015.
You write about it, as you mentioned, in Strange Death of Europe. What do you think? How are the developments since your book? Did Europe recognize this? Did the Western world recognize this problem? And they tried to. Can you turn this process? Did Europe try to turn this process? How do you evaluate the situation now?
Well, I warned in that book of what would happen if things continued on their trajectory, and it was widely read and widely ignored as an argument, and that's, I think, to say that I'm disappointed about that is to vastly understate issues. Western Europe has a fantastic number of challenges now. And I suppose the central challenge is the population are changing. And everyone in Western Europe did two things simultaneously. They underestimated the number of people who wanted to come, and they overestimated their ability to absorb them. And, Prime Minister Starmer recently gave a speech in which he said that Britain was at risk of becoming a country of strangers. He was immediately berated by the left of his party and others for this rather banal and obvious observation. Mm. It's way too late to describe it as that. I think future historians will look back on these decades of Western Europe and just marvel at what politicians were willing to put the general public through. I mean, the most obvious one, let me do it at the easiest level, which is without any. Just take the welfare state. You cannot have a welfare state that exists, that survives, if you have large numbers of people who've never put into it but are taking out of it. And it's almost 15 years ago now when Angela Merkel said, I think to the Financial Times, she said, modern Europe is 12.5% of the world's population. I'm approximating it, don't hold me to these figures. But she said something like, it's 12.5% of the world's population, 25% of global GDP, and 50% of welfare spending. And she said then, things are going to have to change to keep this going. Nothing has changed. And, you know, a country like Britain is taking in thousands of people all the time, illegally, who will never put back into the system what they've taken out in terms of welfare spending. Take out all the identity questions, the integration questions and everything else. How is that sustainable? How can a country, how can a country keep its pension system going when you have hundreds of thousands of people who will never be a net financial gain to the country? And the answer is we'll see. But to my mind, that's catastrophically short-term thinking. And I'm sorry that people didn't listen when I warned.
And isn't it the success of a lot of parties in France, the Freedoms Party in Austria, AFD? You can see that they are trying to give an answer, and that's why Europe's political landscape, that it's not completely changed. But if you compare how it looked like 2008, 2009, 2010, you didn't have in Italy such a government. You
That's true.
Meloni now. You didn't have. You always had Le Pen, and then in the second round, 70-30. One of the Le Pens is losing. Now it's much closer. In Germany, it was unimaginable that a party which is outside of the media spectrum, political landscape, is now on 25% of the polls.
Yeah.
And we can go on and on and on. In Portugal, we could see the latest elections that you have in Sweden, a party, the Democratic Party, which is so. It's these changes a reaction of the people, I think, and this reaction. What I don't understand is you warned. You sold your book in millions of copies, so to say. They don't listen, but why don't they listen to the people? When even just as a communication, if they don't mean it by heart, why don't they try to give some kind of answer to masses, to the question of masses of people in Europe? Why is this ignorance? And why do they give the political landscape to parties that they don't want to give the political landscape?
Because some problems are hard, and the instinct in politics is always to avoid hard problems. It's easier to push off certain problems for your successors to deal with. Look at what happened in America with the Biden administration, the Trump administration. The Biden administration allowed open borders. Millions and millions of people came into the United States, undocumented. And it's harder to keep them out or to return them than it is to let them in. And that is the modern European conundrum, which is it's very easy to do a Merkel. It's hard to reverse it. So people put off for their successors problems they can't answer themselves.